Okay, apparently this is a legendary talk, the future of software, again, from Karpathy. I think he gave the talk of the future of software, so this must be a new iteration on it, and everyone is quite convinced that there is a ghost right here in the frame, okay? There is a ghost behind this girl, and she's just looking off into the distance, and she's about to get her life taken from her, and nobody's concerned. Can we please get her on the phone and make sure she's okay? She's haunted.
Please welcome former director of AI, Tesla, Andrej Karpathy.
Wow, a lot of people here. Hello. Okay, yeah, so I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about software in the...
Sorry, I loved that intro. Just, wow, a lot of people here. And then like the good 10 seconds of just like not a lot of talking. That was great. Dude, I gotta try that out for an intro.
Era of AI. And I'm told that many of you are students, like bachelor's, master's, PhD, and so on, and you're about to enter the industry. And I think it's actually like an extremely unique and very interesting time to enter the industry right now.
I don't know if everybody feels like this is a very interesting time period to enter into the market. Does everyone feel like it's interesting and unique, or are we feeling like it's not that much fun? I think a lot of people aren't super stoked, but he's also talking to, I mean, to be completely fair, Karpathy is talking to a whole group of people that are getting like masters and doctorates in AI. So it's probably pretty interesting for them, okay? Because they're building, out the future and everything. Dude, they just heard that Meta was doing $1 million signing bonuses, so they're like, "Let's go, boys! We're going deep on this one." Right, so maybe it's a little bit different perspective, you know what I mean? Yes, TJ, you are correct. This is going to be literally the Lord of the Rings Blu-ray edition extended scene of this talk. We're going deep on this one.
And I think fundamentally the reason for that is that software is changing again. And I say again because I actually gave this talk already. But the problem is that software keeps changing. So I actually have a lot of material to create new talks.
Okay.
And I think it's changing quite fundamentally. I think, roughly speaking, software has not changed much on such a fundamental level for 70 years. And then
software hasn't changed much in 70 years? I mean, 70 years ago, we were on punch cards or punch paper with mercury tubes delivering memory. Like, when we did the calculations for World War II for Fat Boy, like those calculations were done around the clock with teams of 3 or 4 in a room that was like 110 degrees freedom units. There was no such thing as a keyboard. We didn't have a keyboard, right? So it's like, has software changed? There's at least been one change. Can we all agree? There was, wow, that is horrible, to, hey, we have programming languages that run on all systems. Like there was like, I would venture to say there was a couple changes. There was not even programming languages. Then there was programming languages, but the compiler and the operating system was unique, meaning that you wrote one thing for one computer and that's it. You didn't run anywhere else. And then our era, which started with Ken Thompson, right, who did Unix and C, and that's kind of like our era. So I would at least say it's changed a couple times, going from no programming languages to write once, run only in one close, to this. Did he say 17? Oh, he said 17, not 70? Okay, well, that makes a huge difference. Okay, if he said 17 years, I totally agree with him, yeah. Dude, he's so right. Dude, bro's so right. It's crazy. Dude,
it's changed, I think, about twice quite rapidly in the last few years. And so there's just a huge amount of work to do, a huge amount of software to write and rewrite. So let's take a look at maybe...
Hold on, redo this for a quick second.
It's changed, I think, about twice quite rapidly in the last few years. And so there's just a huge amount of work to do, a huge amount of software to write and rewrite. So let's take a look.
I don't understand, why would we rewrite software if things have changed? First off, I need to understand what his change is. But what has changed so fundamentally that we need to rewrite software? Dude, is he about to rust us? That's crazy. I didn't. Okay, dude, the Karpathy Rust rewrite arc, I did not see coming. Okay, that's crazy.
Look at maybe the realm of software. So if we kind of think of this as like the map of software, this is a really cool tool called Map of GitHub.
Oh, this is so good. This is so good. I like this. I like this a lot because you know what? I think it was Theo that I was arguing with. He was saying that like 50%. No, he was saying more than 50% of all repos are web-based or are like JavaScript, or I think he said it was like JavaScript and HTML. And look at this. There's like cloud, there's Swift, there's learning and Python, there's data. Here's some front-end stuff. There's C++ frameworks. There's the Godot land. There's intrusion arsenal. Not even sure what the hell that means. MERN. That sounds like, okay, that falls under that one. Bypass Bastion. Not even sure what the hell that is. Flataria. Is that Godot Island? Yeah, that's the island of Dr. Monroe, actually, where they have the little freak babies and they do all that stuff. It's weird. It's weird. You wouldn't want, you don't want to go there.
This is kind of like all the software that's written. These are instructions to the computer for carrying out tasks in the digital space. So if you zoom in here, these are all different kinds of repositories, and this is all the code that has been written. And a few years ago, I kind of observed that software was kind of changing, and there was kind of like a new type of software around. And I called this Software 2.0 at the time. And the idea here was that software.
Oh, he did this in 2017. Neural nets?
1.0 is the code you write for the computer. Software 2.0 are basically neural networks. And
is that software or is that just an algorithm? Do you really call algorithms like software? I don't know about that. I mean, I've hand-rolled a lot. I know this is going to be a little bit shocking to some of you guys. But when I decided that I was going to learn JavaScript, I wrote a library 12 years ago, and this does neural nets, RBFs, and fizz, and colony optimizations, and evolutionary algorithms. Look at that. That's my email. That's my old email. And so, yeah, you know, like, I've been writing software 2.0 for a while. This was back when I was getting my master's in the old AI.
In particular, the weights of a neural network. And you're not writing this code directly. You are more kind of like tuning the data sets, and then you're running an optimizer to create the parameters of this neural net. And I think like at the time, neural nets were kind of seen as like just a different kind of classifier, like a decision tree or something like that. And so I think it was kind of like, I think this framing was a lot more appropriate. And now actually what we have is kind of like an equivalent of GitHub in the realm of Software 2.0. And I think the Hugging Face is basically equivalent of GitHub in Software 2.0. And there's also Model Atlas, and you can visualize all the code written there.
I understand this. I don't know what's going on in this graph, right? Like, what is this? What is this graph? I don't even know how to make sense of this. At least here, I'm like, okay, Promptoria. Yeah, I got this. Droid Smith realm. Okay, yeah, I get this. I don't know what Jaxian, but I'm sure it's fantastic. Laravel. Okay, Laravelium. Okay, I understand this. This just looks like a fever dream. I'm literally looking at a fever dream right there.
In case you're curious, by the way, the giants...
Is this the same graph except for this is what it looks like when you're on acid? Where's Mordoria? Yeah, that's right. We have Promptoria, but where's Mordoria?
Circle, the point in the middle, these are the parameters of Flux, the image generator. And so anytime someone tunes a LoRa on top of a Flux model, you basically create a git commit in this space, and you create a different kind of image generator. So basically what we have is Software 1.0 is the computer code that programs a computer. Software 2.0 are the weights which program neural networks.
By the way, this photo is definitely from the 70s or the 80s. There was no such thing as a QWERTY keyboard until, what, 80s or 70s? 70s? My guess is 70s. 70s must have came out. Probably 72. QWERTY? Maybe 68. Anyways, okay. I have a hard time classifying Software 2.0 as neural nets. But okay, you know what? I'm gonna accept it. I'm just gonna say, okay, Software 2.0 are these neural net learning functions for being like better classifiers. Okay, we're just gonna accept it.
Works. And here's an example of AlexNet image recognizer neural network. Now, so far, all of the neural networks that we've been familiar with until recently were kind of like fixed function computers.
Yeah.
Image to categories or something like that.
They're really stuck to something small.
Changed, and I think is a quite fundamental change, is that neural networks became programmable with large language models.
Has anyone done any like the smaller like MLPs? Anyone in chat back, what, a decade ago? Do we got any MLP boys? Any of you guys? Okay, I assume we got a couple. Okay, we got a couple. I see a couple yeses in there. Yeah. The hard part about the MLPs and all this is that you really have like such a fixed function you're working on. You really, like, dude, the amount of things you can solve with it, you have to have such intense data and all that, and it's just so narrow. So yeah, I mean, LLMs are quite magical. Okay, so software 3.0 is prompts. Huh.
And so I see this as quite new, unique. It's a new kind of a computer. And so in my mind, it's worth giving it a new designation of software 3.0. And basically, your prompts are now programs that program the LLM.
I would argue that software 3.0 is actually closer to software 1.0. It's just that the LLMs are a compiler, right? I mean, isn't that all it is that the LLM is really just a compiler at this point? It's just a stochastic compiler that doesn't quite generate the same thing every single time, depending on the day, the month, the words you use and all that. Isn't software 2.0 like relying on kind of these tuned statistical models to just do one activity really, really well? And this one is actually more closer to this one, where you're just like, I'm going to program a computer. I'm just going to compile English into code, and then hopefully the code then runs.
And remarkably, these prompts are written in English. So it's kind of a very interesting programming language. So maybe to summarize the difference, if you're doing sentiment classification, for example, you can imagine writing some amount of Python to basically do sentiment classification, or you can train a neural net, or you can prompt a large language model. So here, this is a few-shot prompt, and you can imagine changing it and programming the computer in a slightly different way. So basically, we have software 1.0, software 2.0, and I think we're seeing, maybe you've seen a lot of GitHub code is not just like code anymore.
Okay, I see what he's saying. So if you look at this thing right here, if you look at Python software 1, you literally have like a hard-coded set of words, right? You have two set of hard-coded words, and you're saying, hey, if we're in the positive, then you get more score. If you're in the negative, you get less score, and we ignore all other words, right? And so then we can say, hey, this thing was positive. But okay, so you see the idea. Then this one is that you go and you give a whole bunch of positive examples, whole bunch of negative examples. You create the MLP that effectively has all the tuned, all the tuned weights to be able to do this kind of binary classifier. Maybe you have two MLPs, one for doing positive, one for doing negative. Bada bing, bada boom, right? It just kind of works. You do that, little training business. And then this one is that it like, you don't need all the examples. You don't need all this. It's all kind of already built into this one. Okay, I don't really get the difference between the two. Well, what he's saying is that in software 2.0, you train one of these neural nets for like a specific use case. Does that make sense? So it's like, I am training software, or I'm training this neural net to solve this one singular problem. Whereas, with the LLMs, I mean, they're just massive MLPs in many, many ways. That it's just like, instead it has every problem effectively solved underneath it.
A different way. So basically we have software 1.0,
so they just trained more, got it,
software 2.0, and I think we're seeing, maybe you've seen a lot of GitHub code is not just like code anymore. There's a bunch of like English interspersed with code. And so I think kind of there's a growing category of new kind of code. So not only is it a new programming paradigm, it's also remarkable to me that it's in our native language of English. And so when this blew my mind a few, I guess, years ago now, I tweeted this, and
I still hate this. I hate this. The reason why I hate this is that English is ambiguous. I've been trained in programming languages in which cannot be ambiguous, right? You cannot, that's the entire point of a parse tree and all this stuff, is that you cannot have two different states that can be created by the same syntax. And so having English, where English has all these nuances to it, you have this like entire weirdness that just crops up. Esperanto? Yes, we should be using Esperanto. Bros will do anything except for learn how to program. The AI bros will literally learn Esperanto to have a concrete language just so they can avoid learning a concrete language to program a computer. You know what I mean? It just seems like kind of crazy.
I think it captured the attention of a lot of people, and this is my currently pinned tweet, is that remarkably, we're now programming computers in English. Now, when I was at Tesla, we were working on the autopilot, and we were trying to get the car to drive. And I sort of showed the slide at the time where you can imagine that the inputs to the car are on the bottom, and they're going through a software stack to produce the steering and acceleration. And I made the observation at the time that there was a ton of C++ code around in the autopilot, which was the software 1.0 code, and then there was some neural nets.
I gotta know, dude, I was following this graph. I just don't, what happened here? Someone has to explain to me how to read this, because I read it like this is time, and it's just like it goes this way, and then all of a sudden we get here and it's just like, yeah, now some of the code has been immediately replaced, and okay, more code has been replaced. Okay, actually no, we reduced some of the code that was replaced, and then we get into an undifferentiable state where I don't know what happened here. I don't know what to do. I genuinely don't know how to read this graph, and I could just argue that I'm an idiot. Fair. That's the sinister hand of software 2. It's the sinister hand of software 2. Damn. It's not a graph. It's 2 code eats code 1. Okay, so somehow code 1 relinquished control from. Yeah, anyways, I don't know how to read this graph, but I understand the general concept, which is there was a bunch of C++ code. Now a lot of the C++ code is being removed or being effectively replaced with neural nets, which actually makes sense. This is a perfectly reasonable thing. I would hope that my car is not literally hard-coded switch statements. Can we all agree that that would actually be terrifying if this was just a bunch of switch statements that can't like change? I don't know. I'm just quite convinced that the devs couldn't figure out every situation. Instead, I want to take all those switch statements. I want to turn it into a matrix that has like 900 million switch statements, and then boom, call that it, right? It's broken programmer's hand, yeah. It's a bunch of, neural nets are just a bunch of if statements.
And they're doing image recognition.
Partial if statements.
I kind of observed that over time, as we made the autopilot better, basically the neural network grew in capability and size, and in addition to that, all the C++ code was being deleted and kind of like was, and a lot of the kind of capabilities and functionality.
All right, we got to go back to this graph just for one more second. I think that if I were to understand this graph, sorry, it's really bothering me. I know, okay, this is obviously autism moment. Just let me have it, okay? If I were to make this graph, I would have something that looks like this. If this is C++ code, okay? I know, here we go, we got to go back. This would be the software 2.0 code, right? And this would be time. Okay, and this would be 100% of code. You know what I mean? And so you get this like nice, slowly filling in, taking over gap where you're just like, okay, I got this. I see what happens as like time goes on. We're taking up more and more of the slice with this code versus that code. But this, my brain just wants to understand it. Okay, because he keeps saying these words that make me think like this. But then it looks like that, and I'm so triggered right now, dude. I know this is ridiculous. Instead of looking at the graph, look at it as volume, it still bothers me, okay?
Some neural nets in there doing image recognition. Basically, the neural network grew in capability and size, and in addition to that, all the C++ code was being deleted and kind of like was, and a lot of the kind of capability.
Oh, like that, like this graph. That's what you're saying? You're saying like the neural net grew in size and capabilities, and then the C++ code was getting shrunk like that graph. Okay, I can't help it. I'm letting it go. I'm letting it go right now. Okay.
And functionality that was originally written in 1.0 was migrated to 2.0. Yeah. So as an example, a lot of the stitching up of information across images from the different cameras and across time was done by a neural network, and we were able to delete a lot of code. And so the software 2.0 stack quite literally ate through the software stack of the autopilot. So I thought this was really remarkable at the time. And I think we're seeing the same thing again, where basically we have a new kind of software, and it's eating through the stack. We have 3 completely different programming paradigms. And I think if you're entering the...
This makes more sense. Okay, I can understand this. This feels good. This feels good. Hey, again, would have chosen something like this, but we're just gonna, I'm just saying you could have also started having something right here. You know what I'm just saying? We could have just, you know what I mean?
Industry, it's a very good idea to be fluent in all of them because they all have slight pros and cons, and you may want to program some functionality in 1.0 or 2.0 or 3.0. Are you going to train a neural net? Are you going to just prompt an LLM? Should this be a piece of code that's explicit, etc.? So we'll have to...
It's at least an interesting take. At least he's not like an LLM maxi that's just like, oh, all things should be solved with LLMs. I still think there's a lot of great things that you can solve, even with simple neural nets like radial basis functions. I still think that they could do a whole bunch for real-time gaming that people just aren't taking advantage of because they're so dang cheap. They're so cheap and so easy to understand, and they work over a fixed range, and it's beautiful, right? Like I actually really I think there's some cool stuff that you could do
to make these decisions and actually potentially fluidly transition between these paradigms. So
Or code, amazing. Well, I mean, what I mean by that is that there's some problems that code sucks, right? Code just sucks at certain problems. Hey, dog, is this a Waterloo bubble water? Like that's a crappy problem to solve. Okay, that's not a code problem. Okay, you just oh sorry, the light was slightly off. Turns out your code sucks and can't understand it because the light was just slightly different than it was before. You know what I mean? That's what sucks so bad about like just code. That's what makes LLM so amazing is that you just like, is this it? And it's like, yeah, that's probably it.
what I wanted to get into now is, first I want to, in the first part, talk about LLMs and how to kind of like think of this new paradigm and the ecosystem and what that looks like. Like what is this new computer? What does it look like? And what does the ecosystem look like? I was struck by this quote from Andrej actually many years ago now, I think. And I think Andrej is going to be speaking right after me. But he said at the time, AI is the new electricity. And
I think I understand what he's attempting to say here is that electricity was a fundamental change to how society works. And he's claiming that AI is going to be that fundamental change, just like electricity was. Still, the statement just seems pretty ridiculous. I'm just throwing it out there. Like, those kind of statements are always just a little bit ridiculous to say. You know what I mean? They just feel a little bit ridiculous. They look a little bit, you know what I mean? It just feels weird.
I do think that it kind of captures something very interesting in that LLMs certainly feel like they have properties of utilities right now. So LLM labs like OpenAI, Gemini, Anthropic, et cetera, they spend CapEx to train the LLMs, and this is kind of equivalent to building out a grid. And then there's OpEx to serve that intelligence over APIs to all of us. And this is done through metered access, where we pay per million tokens or something like that. And we have a lot of demands that are very utility-like demands out of this API. We demand low latency.
I mean, I guess you can make anything kind of feel like it. I don't like this analogy. I don't look at LLMs like utilities. I'm not really, because, you know, that's just not how I'm going to look at this. I think you could try to fit it into this and say, hey, it's kind of like it. But I don't know. This seems like a bit of a stretch.
High uptime, consistent quality, et cetera. In electricity, you would have a transfer switch, so you can transfer your electricity source from like grid and solar or battery or generator. In LLMs, we have maybe open router and easily switch between the different types of LLMs that exist. Because the LLMs are software, they don't compete for physical space. So it's OK to have basically like 6 electricity providers, and you can switch between them, right? Because they don't compete in such a direct way.
Yeah.
And I think what's also a little fascinating, and we saw this in the last few days, actually, a lot of the LLMs went down, and people were kind of like stuck and unable to work. And I think it's kind of fascinating to me that when the state-of-the-art LLMs go down, it's actually kind of like an intelligence brownout.
Dude, that's a terrifying statement. There's something so true about this, though. There's this entire critical thinking path that people have relied on for so long. And now, for the first time, instead of just offloading, say, memorizing phone numbers, memorizing emails, or even having my calendar automatically let me know as opposed to me looking at my calendar, right? There's like an entire kind of world that we've already browned out, if you will, that if one of these services go down, you're just like, dude, I missed like 4 meetings. My calendar wasn't working, right? Like, I get this. Like, this does happen because we're so willing to offload stuff. But the idea of like critical thinking being the thing you're offloading, and then when it goes down, you're just like, I can't do anything. Like, to me, that's like a very separate thing. I'm not sure if I want to be in on the cognitive outsourcing. I get it for researching and doing stuff, but man, cognitive outsourcing, that seems a little disturbing. You know what I mean? Brownout, okay, for those that don't know what a brownout is, just in case you're wondering, whenever you have like an area, like let's just say you have an area like this, and there's like a section of the area that doesn't have power, they call this a brownout, right? It's not a blackout. A blackout is when there's like nothing. A brownout is when there's some amount of stuff out, but not everything out. Okay. Right? A whiteout is everything works. Yeah, I guess if we're going to keep on going with this analogy, which I think, you know, it's like the idea of lights on and off. So there you go.
It's kind of like when the voltage is unreliable in the grid. And the planet just gets dumber the more reliance we have on these models, which already...
Dude, that has to be kind of a scary statement. The planet gets dumber. with the more reliance we have on these models. Why not a grayout? I agree, a grayout sounds much better than a brownout. If it's a blackout for everything's off, then a grayout would be like partially off. I'm actually much more on board for a grayout because a brownout really is just kind of confusing. Maybe there's like maybe there's a reason why that does exist. But either way, that's like a terrifying statement.
Is like really dramatic, and I think will continue to grow. But LLMs don't only have properties of utilities. I think it's also fair to say that they have some properties of fabs. And the reason for this is that the capex required for building LLMs is actually quite large. It's not just like building some power station or something like that, right? You're investing a huge amount of money, and I think the tech tree and for the technology is growing quite rapidly. So we're in a world where we have sort of deep tech trees, research and development, secrets that are centralizing inside the LLM labs. But I think the analogy muddies a little bit also because, as I mentioned, this is software. And software is a bit less defensible because it is so malleable. And so I think it's just an interesting kind of...
I mean, I think what I'm learning from this presentation, at least in this current moment, is that you can make complex topics, when you simplify them, look like a lot of other things. Right? You can metaphor something pretty easily, is what I'm kind of gathering at this point. That's at least how I'm reading this, is just like you just compared it to a utility, and now you're comparing it to a fabrication lab. And you're like, okay, if he says quantum, I'm out. I don't think he's going to say quantum. Quantum and AI hasn't quite hit the super AI hype mainstream, but there's coming a day. I just want you guys to know that we are going to have quantum AI, and it's going to be the single-handed end of the hype cycle universe. Yeah, our brains love rational starting points. I just don't get this.
There's many
honestly,
analogies
I don't
you can
quite
make.
buy
like
this.
A 4-nanometer process node maybe is something like a cluster with certain max flops. You can think about when you're using NVIDIA GPUs and you're only doing the software and you're not doing the hardware. That's kind of like the fabless model.
Right.
But if you're actually also building your own hardware and you're training on TPUs if you're Google, that's kind of like the Intel model where you own your fab. So I think there's some analogies here that make sense. But actually, I think the analogy that makes the most sense, perhaps, is that in my mind, LLMs have very strong kind of analogies to operating systems. In that this is not just electricity or water. It's not something that comes out of the tap as a commodity. These are now increasingly complex software ecosystems.
Okay.
Right? So they're not just like simple commodities like electricity. And it's kind of interesting to me that the ecosystem is shaping in a very similar kind of way, where you have a few closed source providers like Windows or Mac OS, and then you have an open source alternative like Linux. And I think for LLMs as well, we have a kind of a few competing closed source providers, and then maybe the Llama ecosystem is currently like maybe a close approximation to something that may grow into something.
Again, I think, you just have a complex enough topic, you can just make analogies out of anything. Because, yeah, I mean, I guess you could say that, right? But you could pretty much say that about everything, right? Right? Like note-taking apps, you have Google Keep, you have Notion, and then you have the open source version. So it's kind of like an operating system, like Google Keep is kind of like Windows, and Notion's kind of like Mac OS. And then you have, right? Like, I mean, you could kind of just like this, it's like an infinite. It's like you could just like apply very complex topics with simple diameters. You could apply it to pretty much every single situation. So I don't understand this whole operating system
Again,
thing.
I think it's still very early
I'm going to need a
because these are
diagram.
just simple LLMs, but we're starting to see that these are going to get a lot more complicated. It's not just about the LLM itself. It's about all the tool use and the multimodalities and how all of that works. And so when I sort of had this realization a while back, I tried to sketch it out. And it kind of seemed to me like LLMs are kind of like a new operating system, right? So the LLM is a new kind of a computer. It's kind of like the CPU equivalent. The context windows are kind of like the memory. And then the LLM is orchestrating memory and compute for problem solving using all of these capabilities here. And so definitely, if you look at it, it looks very much like operating system from that perspective.
I think my statement stands true that given a complex enough topic, you can make it look like anything. I honestly think that if we tried hard enough, we could also make LLMs look like the animal kingdom. Like we could just be like, it actually shares a lot in common with natural selection, and here's why. Right? Like I think you could just do it. Like, right? I think we could just do these things because you can just do these things because it's complex enough.
A few more analogies. For example, if you want to download an app, say I go to VS Code and I go to download, you can download VS Code and you can run it
Doesn't
on
even believe
Windows,
it for kids.
Linux, or Mac. In the same way as you can take an LLM app like Cursor and you can run it on GPT or Claude or Gemini series, right? It's just a drop down. So it's kind of like...
It kind of like, but this analogy kind of defeats your whole operating system thing, because this is like an inversion of control issue going on here. It's like actually perfectly backwards. Because now you could argue that Cursor is more like the operating system. You know what I'm talking about? I think, you know, what I'm really learning here is that everything breaks down into Kubernetes. Am I wrong here? Is like everything just Kubernetes? Is that what I'm seeing here? Okay. Hey. Okay. You know, hell yeah, brother.
More analogies that I think strike me is that we're kind of like in this 1960s-ish era where LLM compute is still very expensive for this new kind of a computer. And that forces the LLMs to be centralized in the cloud. And we're all just sort of thin clients that interact with it over the network.
This is a decent analogy if you're trying to say that AI is going to become personalized and out of the hands of big companies, but will instead be available to individuals, and we will have control over these networks. That's actually not AI. Okay, that's not AI. That's awesome. But then I think I could purchase that idea, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is that in the 60s, we were all time sharing a single piece. Just like, I mean, in reality, we're all somewhat time sharing the owned GPU farm. But by the 1972 is when the Apple I came out. And so then it became from the big corporation or the big centralized server into now I own the centralized thing. So if that's the case, we are in this kind of, okay, then yeah, if that's the argument that's being made, but I just don't think that's the argument being made. I think that's where everything kind of breaks down here. That would actually be a really cool argument. Also, I just want to throw this out here. This is a bookmark image. So we just did something that I think is super, super interesting. You know how people are like, oh, this is an AI image? And I'm like, yeah, I guess it could be. Like, I could see this being an AI image. I'm not arguing that it is or isn't an AI image. That this seems reasonable. If I go to my bookmarks and I look at this right here, in 2 to 4 years, if we're still alive, anytime you see a video this beautiful, your first thought will be to wonder whether it's real or if AI prompt was beautiful video of 15 different moth species flapping their wings, professional photography, 8K, trending on Twitter. This was 3 years ago, about 3 years ago. So like we just had that happen to us. So he like literally nailed it in 2 to 4 years, except for it's the other way around. It's like any image that defies some of our basic expectation, we're just going to immediately go, oh yeah, that's AI. That's AI. That's AI. It's probably AI.
And none of us have full utilization of these computers, and therefore, it makes sense to use time sharing where we're all just, a dimension of the batch when they're running the computer in the cloud. And this is very much what computers used to look like during this time. The operating systems were in the cloud, everything was...
Again, I don't think he's going to make the analogy that AI is going to be coming to our pocket and we will be the owner of AI. I think he will continue to say that corporations really will own us. They will own intelligence, and that we'll have a psychological dependency now on all these corporations. We're no longer just relying on corporations for, say, our calendar, for, say, our email and communications. We now rely on corporations for our cognitive abilities, which there's very interesting world that we live in.
Streamed around, and there was batching. And so the personal computing revolution hasn't happened yet because it's just not economical. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. But I think some people are trying. And it turns out that Mac Minis, for example, are a very good fit for some of the LLMs.
$2, $4, $6, $8,000 for 10 tokens a second on quantization 4, right? Like, that's kind of crazy. That's kind of crazy, right? You don't get a lot of speed when you map all these things together. It's a little painful. It's a little painful.
It works. And I think these are some early indications maybe of personal computing, but this hasn't really happened yet. It's not clear what this looks like. Maybe some of you get to invent what this is or how it works. Or
yeah, for us to actually have economical AI that actually is worth it, which by the way, that doesn't involve burning down rainforests just to be able to run stupid queries like how to boil an egg or some how to make breakfast. How do I do like just like the dumbest possible thing you can possibly imagine? Like if you could imagine yourself asking the dumbest question. That literally causes the world to catch on fire. Like how to boil water, right? Like exactly, dude, it's crazy. It's crazy what is being asked. And so for this to become economical to the point where it's actually worth it, it needs to become 1,000x more efficient, which is wild, which is like a wild number to get to considering how many eyes have already been looking at it at this point. It's going to be an interesting world for us to get to that point.
What this should be. Maybe one more analogy that I'll mention is whenever I talk to ChatGPT or some LLM directly in text, I feel like I'm talking to an operating system through the terminal. Like it's text, it's direct access to the operating system, and I think a GUI hasn't yet really been invented in like a general way. Like, should ChatGPT have a GUI, like different than just the text bubbles? Certainly some of the apps that we're going to go into in a bit have GUI, but there's no like GUI across all the tasks, if that makes sense. There are some ways
these are
in
some
which
pretty light
LLMs
analogies.
Are
we're going to let guys, we're going to let the metaphor continue. I'm going to let the metaphor happen. I would just like to point out my graph just one more time. Can we just one more time? Can we just look at it for a quick second? Okay. That's all I have to say. Okay. Now that I got that out of the way, we can go on.
Of operating systems in some fairly unique way and from early computing. And I wrote about this one particular property that strikes me as very different this time around. It's that LLMs like flip the direction of technology diffusion that is usually present in technology. So for example, with electricity, cryptography, computing, flight, internet, GPS, lots of new transformative technologies that have not been around. Typically, It is the government and corporations that are the first users because it's new and expensive, et cetera, and it only later diffuses to consumer. But I feel like LLMs are kind of like flipped around. So maybe with early computers, it was all about building.
This is actually a really good point. This is a very unique thing, which is that, like if you think about how the internet was invented, DARPA 1960, whatever, right? That was largely used by various universities. The first basic bit things going on were universities, and then it slowly kind of went through all these things, and then consumers really were the last part of this. And then when you get into, missile ballistics was like just computers themselves for a long time. Like that's how we did all the calculations for World War II was just all this nonsense. Hey, thank you very much, Defiasol, for a gifted sub to Pokimane. That's very nice of you. Appreciate that. And so you can see that this is, I can see this in LLMs, have largely been the other way around. And I think a good reason why LLMs are the other way around is that how are corporations supposed to even take advantage of them at a corporate level? Like you actually have to be able to wholesale out a position and then rely on it. And every corporation that has attempted to make that jump, I'm thinking about you, Klarna, and IBM as well. Both of you have made that jump and then have regretted it and rehired everyone back because you said, oh yeah, it actually doesn't work. We thought it would work. It didn't work. And so I can see that this makes sense, right? Okay, I'm currently purchasing this.
But with LLMs, it's all about how do you boil an egg or something like that. This is certainly like a lot of my use. And so it's really fascinating to me that we have a new magical computer and it's like helping me boil an egg. It's not helping the government do something really crazy like some military ballistics or some special technology. Indeed, corporations are government.
And please also don't use LLMs for military ballistics. Please, like for like dude, it cannot even count the amount of semitones between music. Please don't use Rocket. Don't. The Rocket knows where it is because it knows where it isn't, okay? Don't do it the other way around. Too late, bucko. Please, I'm begging you. Please don't do it.
Behind the adoption of all of us, of all of these technologies. So it's just backwards. And I think it informs maybe some of the uses of how we want to use this technology or like what are some of the first apps and so on. So in summary so far, LLM Labs, fab LLMs, I think it's accurate language to use. But LLMs are complicated operating systems. They're circa 1960s in computing, and we're redoing computing all over again. And they're currently available via time sharing and distributed like a utility. What is new and unprecedented is that they're not in the hands of a few governments and corporations. They're in the hands of all of us because we all have a computer, and it's all just software. And
I get the analogies. Like we can all, like if we're going to be fair, I understand what he's attempting to say. It requires a kabajillion of dollars. It has inputs and outputs. And we currently use it in a time-sharing fashion because it is too uneconomical for us ourselves to run. Okay.
GPT was beamed down to our computers like to billions of people like instantly and overnight, and this is insane. And it's kind of insane to me that this is the case, and now it is our time to enter the industry and program these computers. This is crazy. So I think this is quite remarkable. Before we program LLMs, we have to kind of like spend some time to think about what these things are. And I especially like to kind of...
I don't like to use the word I don't even like to use the word, people spirits. Okay, fantastic. Great name right here. I don't even like to use the term psychology. I don't want to personify them. I want to personify them as little as possible.
Talk about their psychology. So the way I like to think about LLMs is that they're kind of like people spirits.
No.
They are stochastic simulations of people. And the simulator in this case happens to be an autoregressive transformer. So a transformer is a neural net. And it just kind of like goes on the level of tokens. It goes chunk, 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 chunk. And there's an almost equal amount of compute for every single chunk.
Which, by the way, is fundamentally not how humans work. Just so you know, your brains don't do that. Your brains actually largely ignore most things, and it takes like 100 neurons for you to be able to see a cat. You know, for you to look at a cat, it takes like virtually nothing. It takes literally the smallest amount of energy in the universe. It doesn't have to chunk the entire scene to go cat. You can just see the cat because your brain is super amazing. It's not human spirits. I think it's much better to just say reflections of the statistical response of a human. Like, I just don't understand why we can't.
This simulator, of course, is basically there's some weights involved, and we fit it to all of text that we have on the internet and so on. And you end up with this kind of a simulator. And because it is trained on humans, it's got this emergent psychology that is human-like.
At least he puts psychology in quotes. Okay, he puts psychology in quotes, which is good. Okay, yeah. Yeah, it appears to have psychological things. And I think a lot of the reasons why it appears to have psychological, whatever we call this, is because it communicates in human language. And so we then read it with our, like, how we think. And so therefore it's just like this. It communicates on our levels. Yeah, it LARPs. And so it makes us feel as if it has some sort of psychology going to it.
Of course, LLMs have encyclopedic knowledge and memory.
Autism spotted.
And they can remember lots of things, a lot more than any single individual human can because they read so many things. It actually kind of reminds me of this movie, Rain Man, which I actually really recommend people watch. It's an amazing movie. I love this movie.
By the way, did he just admit that the LLMs are massively destroying copyright? Did we just hear him say out loud that LLMs are just massively copyright infringement going on? Because that would be, at least in my head, pretty illegal. It memorizes all these books because it read all the books. How'd it read all the books, Andre? It's crazy.
And Dustin Hoffman here is an autistic savant who has almost perfect memory. So he can read he can read like a phone book and remember all of the names and phone numbers. And I kind of feel like LLMs are kind of like very similar. They can remember SHA hashes and lots of different kinds of things very, very easily. So
it's so interesting that he says those things, like they remember SHA hashes and all these things really, really easily. I mean, they also can't play chess just given like a situation. If you just hand it a board and say, what move next, it doesn't pick a good move. It's hard for it to pick even a legal move. And that is because it doesn't, again, it's just like stats. It's not that it has this like great memory. It's just like if a board looks like this, then it can look like that. It's like it doesn't really remember SHAs. It's just like SHAs look like this.
I would say cognitive deficits. So they hallucinate quite a bit. And they kind of make up stuff and don't have a very good sort of internal model of self-knowledge.
For those that don't know, like this makes people that think they don't hallucinate a lot, try asking questions in a less understood area of an LLM. Like try like Strudel, the music thing that I'm using right now for anyone that hasn't seen it. The Strudel thing, music thing, look at it go. Right, super cool. I'm probably on like question 50 to it, asking it to re-go through its question, re-go through its answers and all that. It literally just makes up stuff constantly. Like it can't even produce sound. It is so broken and so filled with hallucinations. It is just redonkulous. Just read the docs. I am reading the docs, but sometimes the docs are very, very confusing. Such as when you look at chunk and you're like, oh, okay, what's chunk? I want to look at chunk. Right? Oh, you can already see that I've looked at chunk. It's like divides the pattern into a given number of parts, then cycles through the parts in turn, applying the given function to each part. And you're like, how does this work? I want to try this. and then it divides it, but then when you watch it, it like hops back and forth in a way that's really hard to understand, and I don't really get it, and I'm trying to get it, and it's difficult, and I'm reading through them, and so I have to do different things. I have to kind of work through it in a different fashion. So I'm just trying to ask it like, hey, could you maybe explain it to me a little bit better? Right? Yeah, I'm going to have to give it the entire docs and see if I can try to make it work a little bit different. I need a different way to go about it because the current way does not work. Wrong and confident. Anyways.
Not sufficient, at least. And this has gotten better, but not perfect. They display jagged intelligence. So they're going to be superhuman in some problem-solving domains, and then they're going to make mistakes that basically no human will make. Like, they will insist that 9.11 is greater than 9.9, or that there are 2 R's in strawberry. These are some famous examples. But basically, there are rough edges that you can trip on. So that's kind of, I think, also kind of unique. They also kind of suffer from anterograde amnesia. And I think I'm alluding to the fact that if you have a coworker who joins your organization, this coworker will, over time, learn your organization, and they will understand and gain like a huge amount of context on the organization, and they go home and they sleep and they consolidate knowledge and they develop expertise over time. LLMs don't natively do this, and this is not something that has really been solved in the R&D of LLMs, I think. And so context windows are really kind of like working memory, and you have to sort of program the working memory quite directly because they don't just kind of like get smarter by default. And I think a lot of people get tripped up by the analogies in this way.
Wasn't there just like a story about some guy who had a girlfriend? I saw some brief snippet about it on some show or some podcast about a guy who had a girlfriend that was AI, and then its context window ran out, so his girlfriend disappeared, and then he like cried and was sad about it. Like, that's all I know. I saw some like small snippet. I saw Charlie had a video on it. I didn't watch Charlie's video, but I saw like just some snippet about it, and I was just like, dude, that can't be real. This can't be, dude, this seems insane that a guy fell in love with like a model, and then its context window fell out, then he died and he cried and he was so sad about it. It's crazy.
Culture, I recommend people watch these 2 movies, Memento and 50 First Dates. In both of these movies,
I did not like Memento.
The protagonist,
and by the way, the Memento, dude, he has context. Look at that context window. What the hell are my kids doing? Look at this context window.
Their weights are fixed, and their context windows gets wiped every single morning, and it's really problematic to go to work or have relationships when this happens, and this happens to LLMs all the time. I guess one more thing I would point to is security kind of related limitations of the use of LLMs.
Yeah.
So for example, LLMs are quite gullible. They are susceptible to prompt injection risks. They might leak your data, etc. And so, and there's many other considerations.
Wait, what does it mean they might leak your data? How would they leak your data if they don't? Wouldn't that mean they first have to have your data? How'd they get your data, Andre? I feel like, I know, my kids are writing. I'm going to go tell them to shut up. Hold on. I'm going to be right back. But how'd they get your data, Andre? Dude, that is crazy that they're like, oh, it could leak your private data. It's just like, well, how did it get the private data to begin with, right? Because I assume my context window is only some sort of ephemeral session. So how did that work? I'm a little bit confused by that.
Security related. So basically, long story short, you have to simultaneously think through this superhuman thing that has a bunch of cognitive deficits and issues.
I hate that these are all AI generated because they all look terrifying, right? They're all just like terrifying images that just make me feel deeply uncomfortable, but I can't really say why. I actually can't say why. These images are all nice. Like, nothing about it is bad. It's just like I just get really angry. I feel my internals going,
and
ew.
Yet they are extremely useful. And so how do we program them, and how do we work around their deficits and enjoy
Yeah,
their
it's uncanny, but I can't even
powers?
say it's uncanny because I can't even recognize it.
So what I want to switch to now is talk about the opportunities of how do we use these models and what are some of the biggest opportunities. This is not a comprehensive list, just some of the things that I thought were interesting for this talk. The first thing I'm kind of excited about is what I would call partial autonomy apps. So for example, let's work with the example of coding. You can certainly go to ChatGPT directly, and you can start copy-pasting code around. And
I don't know how many times I have to say, this is honestly one of the largest reasons why I never used ChatGPT at all during the first couple years. It being its own chat app was just, it is just purely worthless for me. To even like look up examples, it is just so dang annoying, right? Because it took so long. It would take like, 2 minutes to get things out. And it was just like, dude, this is just a horrible experience. The fact that OpenAI did not just immediately start making, oh my gosh, I just can't believe they didn't immediately start making
copy
an app
pasting bug
for these
reports and
things.
stuff around and getting code and copy pasting everything around. Why would you do that? Why would you go directly to the operating system? It makes a lot more sense to have an app dedicated for this. And so I think many of you use Cursor. I do as well. And Cursor is kind of like the thing you want instead. You don't want to just directly go to the ChatGPT. And I think Cursor is a very good example of an early LLM app that has a bunch of properties that I think are useful across all the LLM apps.
I do agree. I like the fact that I can tag like rules, or I can tag files in Cursor, and that I can do a good job at identifying these rules and these files and kind of get like the context together correctly to do stuff. I do think that that's pretty cool. Like what they did and what they saw right away, I thought that was like, that's a good idea. Good job. Good job, Cursor, right? Like that was really good. That was a good plan, because it does make it objectively better. I still don't like vibe-coded apps, or even partially vibe-coded apps. I still have the same problem, which is every single time this happens, I ultimately feel like if I want to take my app from a toy project into something that's real, I have to still just hand code everything. And it just always comes to this exact same conclusion every single time. I don't want it to be that way. I just always feel that way. I just don't know what to do with it. It just makes me feel that way. And maybe someday, maybe this is just me. Maybe I'm a boomer. I accept my boomerness and that I'm not the future of software, and I'm just a dinosaur that's slowly going extinct. Fine, I'll give you that. But I have a hard time letting an app get too big under vibe coding. I feel really I don't know. I just feel genuinely super lost with it. I feel super lost, and it makes me super confused. And I just feel like I have all the ideas of an app that works, but I've only ever like lightly code reviewed it, and that's it. And so therefore, I don't actually know what's happening. And then every time I read code, like I don't understand the transformation of data and its shape. And it's like I just feel confused. If that makes sense. I just feel confused. That's all.
That we have a traditional interface that allows a human to go in and do all the work manually, just as before. But in addition to that, we now have this LLM interface.
I do want to say one other thing, because I really did try to vibe code really hard, like not just kind of vibe code. I tried I went with, I'm going to vibe code the most vibe codey thing. Oh, I already took it down. Okay, I already took it down. What's it called? Let me go like this. Chessie, jump over here. Go run this. No, that's the Stockfish one. Go run. It's Twitch redirect. This one. There we go. All right. And if I go here and I go localhost this guy, and I do a quick login, the login I did all with AI, that was great. But pretty much this whole app is largely vibe coded, and so is this admin panel. The admin panel is purely vibe coded, and it's just at this point where some problems exist, and my only solution is like, dude, the data transfer and the state and how state is set up is just like so insane in my head that the only reasonable answer is that I have to effectively redo the entire data model all the way through, and there's no other simple solution. Who won the Anna Kramling match? We did it. And so it's like, I feel like if I vibe code regularly, my brain becomes lazy. Yes, and here's a crazy thing that started happening. I started doing this a bunch, building this application, and while I was doing it, I actually realized that I stopped kind of working, and I'd have like two things being vibed at the same time, and I'd have like a good 5 minutes waiting for like something to be done. And it's just like, I just wouldn't really program. It's just like I found myself in this weird, distracted consumerism mentality of like, things are running, what's on Twitter. It's just like this weird world that was going on in my head. And I actually, I realized what I was doing. It took me a while to kind of understand it, but I realized that I was like really just sitting back in my own head, which is a really weird experience. But I really wanted to, I'm genuinely trying to understand these things. I genuinely am trying to say like, hey, I'm a good prompter. because that's always the big thing that, dude, I get it every single time I say anything negative about AI, that people are like, oh, well, the real problem. Dude, I've seen you prompt. I already know. Here's the thing is that you're actually really not good. And you just don't. It's like, no, actually, I've made some apps. I'm understanding it. I think I have a fairly good idea of what actually makes a good one versus a bad one. And now it's like, when I do it, I just find all these weird, like, second order effects in my body. And I don't really know how to think through them yet. Anyways, we need more skibbity prompts.
And so some of the properties of LLM apps that I think are shared.
Also, the single worst C++ thing of all time. This is right. Isn't this a syntax error? Am I correct on this? That you need a space between these two things. I can't remember what causes this. Am I wrong on this one? There's like a little space needed. Isn't there some situation in which you need a space? Not anymore. Okay, well, it was a thing. There was a space needed under some certain compiler, right? I feel like I remember running into this, that there was this situation where I needed a space somewhere, and I can't remember why. Most vexing parse. Yes, there was like a situation in C++ 11. Oh, it's not an issue anymore. Dude, most of the world's on C++ 11. Okay? Hate to break it to you.
Useful to point out.
Oh, get with the times, old man?
The LLMs basically do a ton of the context management.
Go to any corporation.
Number two, they orchestrate multiple calls to LLMs, right? So in the case of Cursor,
I left Netflix in 2014 or 2024, and we still were C++ 11.
There's under the hood embedding models for all your files, the actual chat models that apply diffs to the code, and this is all orchestrated for you. A really big one that I think also maybe not fully appreciated always is application-specific GUI and the importance of it. Because you don't just want to talk to the operating system directly in text. Text is very hard to read, interpret, understand, and also—
I actually love talking to the operating system with text and all this stuff.
So, like, you don't want to take some of these actions natively in text.
Terminal's not
it's much better to just
a
see
utility
a
for
diff
me.
as like
It's
red
part of my
and green
personality.
change, and you can see what's being added or subtracted. It's much easier to just do Command Y to accept or Command N to reject. I shouldn't have to type it in text, right? So a GUI allows a human to audit the work of these fallible systems and to go faster. I'm going to come back to this point a little bit later as well.
I'm still actually not sure if it makes you go faster. I know, like, people do move faster and all that. I just don't, again, this is old man yelling at clouds. I don't know. I've been proven wrong, though. I know somebody that's really good at it.
There's what I call the autonomy slider. So for example, in Cursor, you can just do tab completion. You're mostly in charge. You can select a chunk of code and Command K to change just that chunk of code. You can do Command L to change the entire file, or you can do Command I, which just, let it rip, do whatever you want in the entire repo. And that's the sort of full autonomy agentic version.
I do like that, by the way, with Cursor, where you can Command K a certain function, and you're just like, when we were doing the game programming stuff, I'm like, hey, help me with this distance formula. I need to be able to walk a path. Can you help me with this? Okay, hey, can you do this? Like, I actually really liked that, like, being able to do, like, specific kind of autocomplete in very small little situations. I really did like that.
You are in charge of the autonomy slider, and depending on the complexity of the task at hand, you can tune the amount of autonomy that you're willing to give up for that task. Maybe to show one more example of a fairly successful LLM app, Perplexity. It also has very similar features to what I just pointed out in Cursor. It packages up a lot of the information. It orchestrates multiple LLMs. It's got a GUI that allows you to audit some of its work. So for example, it will cite sources, and you can imagine inspecting them. And it's got an autonomy slider. You can either just do a quick—
You can imagine inspecting them. I wonder how many people that use AI to summarize stuff and given sources, like how many people are actually going through the sources. I wonder if source visiting has gone dramatically down because there's like a reliance on the LLMs themselves. I'm curious about that.
Search, or you can do research, or you can do deep research and come back 10 minutes later. So this is all just very—
I know there's a couple people saying I do, but you guys are also—
So I guess my question is—
Dude, this is a chat full of autists, okay? This is a very, like, everyone that's in this chat at this moment is not normal people, okay? You do not reflect— I'm not saying you're far on the bell curve in the smartness. I'm just saying you're not normal. Okay? I'm not calling you smart. It's just you're different, okay? Hi, friends.
I feel like a lot of software will become partially autonomous. And I'm trying to think through, like, what does that look like? And for many of you who maintain products and services, how are you going to make your products and services partially autonomous? Can an LLM see everything that a human can see? Can an LLM act in all the ways that a human could act? And can humans supervise and stay in the loop of this activity? Because again, these are fallible systems that aren't yet perfect. What does a diff look like in Photoshop or something?
Can you ever have a system designed by humans that could be perfect? Can imperfect beings create something that is perfect?
Like that, you know? And also a lot of the traditional software right now, it has all these switches and all this kind of stuff that's all designed for human. All of this has to change and become accessible to LLMs. So one thing I want to stress with a lot of these LLM apps that I'm not sure gets...
Someone saying math, for example, first off, math is not something we created, okay? Math is just something we purely observed, okay? Math is not a creation, it's an observation. Those are two very, very different things. So, no, you can't, you in fact can't say that we created math. Disagree? Fine. Go for it. Disagree all you want. Math is 100% creation. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're totally right, chat. You're totally right. Hey, get back to that. Hey, you know, that subreddit needs some moderation, buddy. You better get back there. Yeah, I don't think so. Imaginary numbers are extremely useful and happen all the time. Okay, controversial. I don't think it's controversial. I think we are discovering it. That's it. Newton just happened to get hit in the head and was like, "Damn, these like look like." We created we definitely created the notation ourselves. True, factual, base 10 calculations. True, truing. Not arguing that one at all. Yeah, definitely. I would definitely say that. Right? We created the language of it. Yes. Anyways, the notation is invented. Yes, but the facts it states are observed. Boom. That's what I'm saying. The arbitrary choice of base, because we got little 10 little fingies, that's at least how I assume we got base 10 counting, is because we got little 10 little fingies and we're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 0. Oh shit! What do we do? One would assume that that's where we came from. That's at least how I assume we got base 10. It's due to 10 toesies. Oh damn! It's 10 toesies, not fingsies. I mean, we could have been counting in base, like, think about it. We could have been counting in base 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, right? Like, isn't that way better? Like, wasn't that way better to count in base 2? Look at that. I've only used 4 fingers so far, and I'm at 15. So simple, an undergrad can even understand it. 10-bit human, 132, baby. Are you bragging? Yeah, I am. I am bragging. Because base 2 is better than base 10, idiot. I don't need 10 symbols. I only need 2 symbols, which I can represent on each finger. Okay? We used to count in base 12, but we've only recently standardized in base 10. That seems insane, and I don't know what you mean by recently. Like, I don't know what the Romans were up to, but their numerals were all crazy. I don't know what, I don't even think they had a base system to begin with. I'm not even sure what the hell happened. I have myself personally Ivy Sheeps. Just like, you have what? I gotta do math? Is this bowling? Why does your future score hurting is based on your previous score? Dude, dog, you got what? This is bowling, right? Is this how bowling got invented? Someone was watching Roman numerals and said, dude, I got an idea. LXIX, nice. Bowling. Okay. Unfortunately, everybody was right. I'm gonna have to put a pause in this little reaction right here. The stand-up starts. Okay. The stand-up is starting. So I'm gonna go use the bathroom, make sure I'm tight, ready for this nice stand-up, and then we're gonna have to finish this after the stand-up. I know I didn't realize how long this was gonna go. We're at 1 hour and 13 minutes already. So I'm gonna have to take a quick break. We're gonna do the stand-up. We got Casey Moratori, Trash Dev, Tej, everybody. We're going to bring them all together. It turns out I was really bad at math, and I thought I had 2 hours and 30 minutes, but I only had 1 hour and 30 minutes, so I was an idiot. Okay?
There are 2 major ways that I think this can be done. Number 1, you can speed up verification a lot. And I think GUIs, for example, are extremely important to this, because a GUI utilizes your computer vision GPU in all of our head. Reading text is effortful and it's not fun, but looking at stuff is fun, and it's just a kind of like a highway to your brain. So I think GUIs are very useful for auditing systems and visual representations in general. And number two, I would say, is we have to keep AI on the leash. I think a lot of people are getting way overexcited with AI agents, and it's not useful to me to get a diff of 1,000 lines of code to my repo. Like, I'm still the bottleneck, right? Even though that 1,000 lines come out instantly, I have to make sure that this.
I'm happy the AI wrote this, even though the 1,000 lines came out instantly. Beautiful line there. I do agree with him though. He's bringing up a good point, but again, I think this is where people you have to accept a lack of control to be able to move at a certain speed, right? You have to choose one,
bugs.
Understanding or speed.
It's just like, and that it's doing the correct thing, right? And that there's no security issues and so on. So I think.
By the way, the whole there's no security issues or any of that. I've told this story many times about me. Like one line of code could take down Netflix. There is no like. Security isn't just simply as reviewing some code and make sure it's good. There was an entire DDoS, and it wasn't even a DDoS. You don't even need to do the first D, just a DOS. And it's like a branch of the repulsive grizzly attack where a single request could take on an entire instance. And this existed in most web frameworks for a long time. It's a regex expansion thing. Cloudflare accidentally pushed up something, just last year that took down a huge portion of Cloudflare that was another regex expansion problem. And so this idea that's like, yeah, you just need the review for security. It's like, no, it's actually extremely hard, and security takes a lot of like mental effort to actually figure these things out, because it's not as simple as just review the code. A lot of times security, like the big security problems, it's not just something like, oh, you accidentally left a port open that people can log in unauthenticated. It's more like you've set up a series of 15 steps that when all of these things happen, your whole life will explode and people will be able to screw you. But it's like it's such like a tiny sliver of everything. And this is why, it's why automated is a dirty word in security. I wouldn't be surprised if that's true. I'm never have claimed to be a good security guy. If that's true, totally understand that. Yeah, it's a cascade effect. It's a very, timing attacks are a great example. How would you ever know that someone would be able to measure whether the computer is doing a predictive branch or not, right? It's just like they're able to do such intense like forms of attacks that the things you're doing, you just don't even have the ability to know about those things. And so like, how would you ever even know that you're programming something that could accidentally DOS yourself, right? Accidentally give yourself a repulsive grizzly attack because you're using way too much memory or doing something really silly. Like, how are you supposed to know those things if you're just doing these reviews? You're going to actually set up a situation and it's going to happen. I don't think most things are going to be simple, like, oops, we accidentally left user editing open. I do that joke where I show cursor. I had cursor here. In fact, I'm pretty sure I could find it here. Hold on just one second. There you go. I still love this. I effectively was building a site where I need someone to log in, and I realized that like we're just sending down session data and just trusting it. Never even put any security on it. Like the only reason why I knew we were doing something massively insecure was because I've hand-rolled my own auth multiple times in the past. And so I was like, well, wait a second. Like, we're doing session. How do I verify this session? Like, who's doing this? And it was just like, oh, it's right here. And then I asked him, it's just like, you're certainly right. I should have been doing this with the JWT. Like, the thing is where the thing went wrong is it didn't go wrong at the fact that I asked for a login. It's the fact that I have to ask for a login and then add, and be secure about it, idiot. Right? Like, people don't think like that. You're not going to get someone that has never worked with computers and be like, don't forget to use JWT. MD5 is insecure, right? Like, you don't. They're not going to say those words because they're not even sure what a server or a client is, let alone how to actually add cryptographically secure tokens in betwixt those two. Like, it would be ridiculous expectation for you to think that you can even do this. And so that's like the worries that I have with all this stuff, is that there's a huge amount of stuff that I don't understand. And so I would add massively insecure stuff all the time. And if I was just reviewing stuff and going fast, you know, in betwixt your mom's auth chat, damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, basically, we have to sort of like, it's in our interest to make the flow of these two go very, very fast, and we have to somehow keep the AI on the leash because it gets way too overreactive. It's kind of like this. This is how I feel when I do AI-assisted coding. If I'm just vibe coding, everything.
By the way, I don't know. I don't know if we needed to go faster. Like, it truly, like, can someone please help me on this? Is really our biggest problem speed of writing code? Whenever I worked in big organizations, the big problem was, like, I had to get 15 teams together to do a whole bunch of crap. Like, there was so many more problems that didn't ever involve coding itself. Like, searching was most certainly a huge problem. Like, AI is actually really fantastic. I love the fact that I can jump in and use Claude or use Cursor, really, because cursors are really good at this, and just be like, hey, Cursor, I don't know anything about this code base. Can you help me identify where a couple of these things exist so I can go look? Like, I think search mode is incredible. Semantically aware search mode, right?
Work done, and it's not so great to have an
Dude, that's
overreactive
crazy how much time it takes to play.
So this slide is not very good, I'm sorry, but I guess I'm trying to develop, like many of you, some ways of utilizing these agents in my coding workflow and to do AI-assisted coding. And in my own work, I'm always scared to get way too big diffs. I always go in small incremental chunks. I want to make sure that everything is good. I want to spin this loop very, very fast. And I sort of work on small chunks of single concrete thing. And so I think many of you probably are developing similar ways of working with LLMs.
Oh, by the way, you know that phrase where people always tell you, like, those who aren't getting great at AI are going to get left behind. Hey, you want me to give you the last 3 years worth of knowledge of AI? Are you ready for this? You better sit down and get out a pen and piece of paper because, dude, you've probably been left behind if you haven't been doing it. Okay, here we go. Are you ready? Try to describe your problem accurately. Try to move in as small of a step as possible. Wow, man, probably got left behind if you weren't using it. Probably, real talk, you probably got left behind. Well, I guess I caught you up now for the last 3 years. I know, but isn't that kind of like a crazy aspect that people keep trying to do? Dude, isn't that, it truly is crazy, right? That there's like this weird fear hype that has been going through people. They're like, dude, you're going to be left behind. It's just like, what the hell am I being left behind on? We have the least sophisticated version of this that anything you're doing is going to greatly change in the next 6 months to a year anyways. It's already changed a lot. I'm not hand copying and pasting context anymore. I'm taking files in Cursor. Dramatically simpler. Do you really think that not using it today is going to somehow leave you behind and you're completely unusable? I'm fine being left behind. That's it. We're getting Kirk Cameron out. We're doing the Left Behind series. All right, bring him in. Come on in.
I also saw a number of blog posts that try to develop these best practices for working with LLMs. And here's one.
Dude, this is literally what I'm saying. Notice the top one is just like, hey, do the shit. And the bottom's on like, okay, implement a token bucket rate limiter in Python with the following requirements. Requirement 1, requirement 2, requirement 3, requirement 4, consider, right? Dude, you could probably write it with less words in Python than it takes for you to describe it, buddy. It's crazy.
That I read recently and I thought was quite good. And it kind of discussed some techniques, and some of them have to do with how you keep the AI on the leash. And so as an example, if you are prompting, if your prompt is vague, then the AI might not do exactly what you wanted, and in that case, verification will fail. You're going to ask for something else. If a verification fails, then you're going to start spinning. So it makes a lot more sense to spend a bit more time to be more concrete in your prompts, which increases the probability of successful verification, and you can move forward. And so I think a lot of us are going to end up finding kind of techniques like this. I think in my own work as well, I'm currently interested in what education looks like together with kind of like now that we have AI and LLM.
I'm very excited about this topic. I actually am very curious exactly how he wants to break this down, because I think that this right here, AI and education, is either going to be our greatest failure as a species, or I don't know yet, right? Like, I don't know if it's actually better, but I can tell you that it has a huge chance to make the greatest failure we've ever done, ever, of all time.
What does education look like? And I think a large amount of thought for me goes into how we keep AI on the leash. I don't think it just works to go to ChatGPT and be like, hey, teach me physics.
Agreed.
I don't think this works because the AI is like, gets lost in the woods. And so
not only does it get lost in the woods, it starts making things up, but you don't even know because you're not educated enough to even understand that the things that you're reading about aren't even true to begin with. There's like a whole slew of things going on there. Totally right on this whole keeping it on a leash.
For me, this is actually two separate apps, for example. There's an app for a teacher that creates courses, and then there's an app that takes courses and serves them to students. And in both cases, we now have this intermediate artifact of a course that is auditable, and we can make sure it's good, we can make sure it's consistent, and the AI is kept on the leash with respect to a certain syllabus, a certain progression of projects, and so on. And so this is one way of keeping the AI on the leash, and I think has...
I don't see... I think we're just about... Yeah, unfortunately, I think we're just about to... Yeah, okay, we're going to go into a different topic, yeah. See, I really think he missed the mark on this one. This one, I think, is way more deep and way more scary and way more potentially more exciting. Again, I am so unknown on this one. All I know is that AI, like, one thing that AI is terrible about is just, like, giving you answers, and people will take the lazy route. I'm reading this music theory book right now, and literally one of the first opening words was, hey, you know, like, music theory is great. You know, I know a lot of people are kind of sad that it does take so many years to master, but hey, it's really great that you're taking the step now. This is fantastic. And, you know, you just read it, and you're just like, man, how often does somebody go into something in today's day and age and think, okay, it's time to spend some years mastering this, as opposed to, okay, I need the answer right now. Okay. Hey, I need to just get to the answer right now. Okay, what's the answer? I just need the answer. Well, music theory doesn't take years to master. I think, see, okay, so you're doing the exact, like, expert, beginner, idiot thing, which is, yes, you can learn things about music theory in an hour. But to truly master it and really understand it, there's levels of knowledge that don't exist until you've done something 1,000 times, right? You can understand that there's various things, there's tension creation and tension release, and you can say all these words. But to truly understand it, to feel it deep down, you have to hear it, and you have to, like, there's a whole, like, putting all the things together to go, okay, this is why. And I also don't believe you that you can learn music theory in an hour. I just don't believe you, even in the slightest. But even if you could, there's still the application of music theory and turning it into real knowledge, not just knowledge on a piece of paper, but actual, like, internalization of it, which is just, like, an extremely hard thing. Right? Like, yeah, sure, you could tell me the perfect fifth to every note I ask you. Oh, what's the perfect fifth to A3? Go! Right? That's just fifths. Look at that, dude. We were on the same page right there. But yes, so I hear you, but that doesn't actually make you understand it. You just know some numbers, right? You don't actually know it. It's not here, it's here. You got to get it here. This is the greatest distance in the universe. Right? Yeah, just like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is another great example. Any of these things are great examples. You can understand things, but it doesn't mean you have it here. Right? Head to heart, greatest distance in the universe.
There's a much higher likelihood of working, and the AI is not getting lost in the woods. One more kind of analogy I wanted to sort of allude to is I'm no stranger to...
Hold on, I did like this. Okay, hold on. May I disagree? You can always disagree as long as you don't say something in a stupid way, okay? Then it's just annoying. We may not have time to invest in that learning because life pace will adjust to AI time. Yeah, I agree. I think that we're constantly... I mean, this is one of those things that I think people should fight back. I mean, this, again, we've talked about this, which is like the super hard part of stuff. If you're sitting in an organization and you have 9 people around you just vibe coding and mashing out features, and even though the code base is becoming a progressive, bigger mess, there's a lot of people in management or other places, maybe people that aren't directly in management but one step over, that are going to see, oh man, 9 people are absolutely crushing it, but this one guy's kind of far behind, hasn't been delivering features, hasn't been hitting the backlog. What's going on with that guy? Maybe he's not cutting it in the day and age of AI. And maybe what's actually going to happen is that your product's going to be an absolute disaster here in a year, and you won't even be able to move forward, but you fired the one guy who was trying to make it so that you could move forward, but he just did not appear on paper more productive. So I totally agree. Like, there's this weird AI pacing time problem that's going on where we're trying to settle on a new normal that I'm not even sure is a good normal, right? This may not be normal. This may not be good at all. It's just a thing that we have these weird pressures on that we've allowed people to do. And so I'm kind of like, generally, I try to push back on that. This is part of my ability. Like, I feel like I have a huge audience that I can speak out to. So I'm trying to give some good reasoning here for why we should maybe consider these things a little bit, a little bit better before we just dive right in. And maybe one day we don't ever have to worry and you can just vibe code your whole life and everything's fantastic and coding becomes a completely useless skill. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but okay, yeah, I could be wrong. Hey, I could be wrong, people.
Autonomy, and I've kind of worked on this, I think, for 5 years at Tesla. And this is also a partial autonomy product and shares a lot of the features. Like, for example, right there in the instrument panel is the GUI of the autopilot.
By the way, I think this is one of the most atrocious design decisions of all time. I actually think it should be illegal to have a touchscreen in a car. If you don't give me a manual volume raiser until I do not have to drive a single cent of the way, then you shall not take my eyes off the road. It is somehow not illegal, which blows my mind. Like, yes, if I didn't have to drive, give me all the screens you want to give me all over the place. I don't care. But the fact that I can't press buttons is insane. Absolutely insane. Dude, crazy. Crazy.
So it's showing me what the neural network sees and so on. And we have the autonomy slider, where over the course
it's
of
a W take. I know it's a W take. It is.
We did more and more autonomous tasks for the user.
I have a volume button on the wheel. Yeah, that's good. Because that way your hands can literally stay on the wheel and you can go like this. Wow, that's normal. Instead of like, hold on, sound menu, oh shit, I just ran over somebody. Dude, like what kind of crazy, like who thought that was okay? Boomer take, glad to have this as a boomer take. This is a good boomer take. This should be something we should not allow to happen. I don't want a 35-mile-an-hour moving machine that weighs 1,000 pounds flying down the streets where my kids might be walking because somebody can't keep their eye on it because they're trying to like make a dial go up and down. Like that's the last thing I want in my life. I said 1,000, which is way under. It's like I think there's somewhere between 1,200 to probably 2,500 depending on the vehicle. I have no idea what the
and maybe the story that I wanted to tell.
In fact, actually, I literally have no idea. Let's find out. How much does the average car weigh? We'll go to Google for this one. Sorry, Pewdie. Sorry, Pewds Pie. Oh, wow. Okay. That's crazy.
Actually, the first time I drove a self-driving vehicle was in 2013. And I had a friend who worked at Waymo. And
oh, man, I cannot. I'm about to hot take so hard here.
He offered to give me a drive around Palo Alto. I took this picture using Google Glass at the time. And many of you are so young that you might not even know what that is. Yeah, this.
He used Google Glass. This actually greatly changes my perspective about him. Okay, we're putting things together. We'll talk in a moment.
This was like all the rage at the time. And we got into this car, and we went for about a 30-minute drive around Palo Alto, highways, streets, and so on. And this drive was perfect. There was 0 interventions. And this was 2013, which is now 12 years ago. And it kind of struck me because at the time when I had this perfect drive, this perfect demo, I felt like, wow, self-driving is imminent because this just worked. This is incredible. But here we are 12 years later, and we are still working on autonomy. We are still working on driving agents. And even now, we haven't actually like fully solved the problem. Like you may see Waymos going around and they look driverless, but there's still a lot of teleoperation and a lot of human in the loop of a lot of this driving.
I did not know that.
So we still haven't even like declared success, but I think it's definitely like going to succeed at this point. But it just took a long time.
Okay, what's the
takeaway? So I think like this is software is really
sound
tricky,
is different.
I think in the same way that driving is tricky. And so when I see things like, 2025 is the year of agents, I get very concerned. And I kind of feel like, this is the decade of agents. And
good takeaway. This is a good takeaway. In fact, I would, maybe this is the decade of self-driving cars. We're still 12 years away from it not even working. We actually have no idea what the future is going to be like. I remember all the self-driving. Like, I was just new to the Bay Area in 2013, and I remember seeing self-driving cars 12 years ago. I remember being like, wow, dude, it's right around the corner. I'll give it like 6 months, and we should see more. Dude, you know how many people I remember in 2014 tell me it was like 6 months away from these things happening? There is definitely There's definitely a thing here. Good self-driving would be prevalent today if there weren't for regulators. Well, there's a little bit more than regulators. There's also a lot of other things, right? Waymo has some, like, self-driving has some pretty tough times in some various snow-based environments. There's can be some various outside effects that can make things hard. It's not just as simple as it would be everywhere right now if there weren't for them damn regulators. Which, by the way, you know me and the government. You already know that I'm not a huge fan of the government, so I'm kind of already on your team. Okay, you don't even have to sell me. I'm like, they take my freedom, right? But nonetheless, right? It turns out regulations is okay sometimes. Sometimes it's okay because for a long time people forgot that the car had a problem distinguishing a bundle of sticks and a baby. So like, there's also that. That's like a big problem. But nonetheless, to get to the point of all this is that first off, him being a glass hole really shapes a lot of how I now see him. If you were wearing a Google Glass in 2013, what this really means is this guy is truly a tech like maximalist that believes that believes that the future is now, right? You know how many people that were wearing Google Glass thought that the whole world was going to go AR like at that moment? In the next 6 months, we're all AR boys. Everybody, dude, get your baby on AR. They're going to get left behind if they aren't knowing how to navigate the world in AR land, right? It's just like, okay. And then guess what happened? We all called them glass holes because we all thought they were super annoying. And now Meta, 10 years later, 12 years later, is re-releasing out the exact same thing except with the partnership of Ray-Bans, and people are like, okay, it's not that bad now. I mean, I could give, I'd give some Ray-Bans a try with a little bit of hearing on it. I'd give it a shot. On those ones. But it's kind of crazy, right? It's just that it took this long, and people are still like, meh, glass holes, right? So he probably overestimates the integration of technology. Because I'm going to tell you a little secret. I don't think my mom cares. And I have a sneaking suspicion your mom doesn't care either, right? They don't care. There's a lot of people that just don't care about the technology. They don't really want AR. They just want to live their life. They enjoy not being connected in. So there's that, you know?
This is going to be quite some time. We need humans in the loop. We need to do this carefully. This is software. Well, let's be serious here. One more kind of analogy that I always think through is
sounds like
the Iron Man
coming.
suit.
I know people get a little too excited.
I always love Iron Man. I think it's like so correct in a bunch of ways.
Okay, who here, when they were younger, watched the first Iron Man and got tech boners and really wanted to get better and better at tech? Who did it? It's okay. First Iron Man was based. Okay, first Iron Man was based. We can all say the first Iron Man was based. All right, like. We can all make arguments that the rest of the Iron Men were just shallow comparisons compared to the first one. The first one was awesome. Yeah. Iron Man 1, Too Old was already in, but it probably still got you excited, right? The first one, the Social Network movie was a gateway drug to PHP for a lot of people. That is a great tweet. That is a great tweet, my friend. And we're going to make that. The Social Network was a gateway drug to PHP. Boom.
With respect to technology and how it will play out. And what I love about the Iron Man suit is that it's both an augmentation, and Tony Stark can drive it, and it's also an agent. And in some of the movies, the Iron Man suit is quite autonomous and can fly around and find Tony.
Yeah, that's when I really think it fell apart, actually. That's when I think the whole show fell apart, is when it got too fantastical. Back when it was kind of like grungy and was kind of just, things mostly worked but not completely worked. Like, that's actually when I thought Iron Man was the best. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I mean? Yeah, you know what I mean?
So this is the autonomy slider. Is we can build augmentations or we can build agents. And we kind of want to do a bit of both. But at this stage, I would say working with fallible LLMs and so on, I would say, it's less Iron Man robots and more Iron Man suits that you want to build. It's less like building flashy demos of autonomous agents and more building partial autonomy products. And these products have custom GUIs and UI UX, and we're trying to, and this is done so that the generation verification loop of the human is very, very fast. But we are not losing the sight of the fact that it is in principle possible to automate this work. And there should be an autonomy slider in your.
Okay, like if I take a step back from all this, I'm listening to him and I take a step back. Other than programming, is there anything he's really referring to? Because like I'm sitting here like listening to this and I'm realizing like this has to be really only about programming. Because I just sat down with a lawyer just recently and I asked him a bunch of questions about this. And I'm like, is this really what's happening? And he's just like, yeah, paralegals really have a big thing where they no longer build me boilerplate code, or boilerplate law. I just go and ask, ChatGPT to do it for me, and then I have to pretty much rewrite it as I go. But hey, at least it got me into point. And so then I just go through it. So he's like, yeah, I see paralegals having somewhat of a problem coming up here. But he's like, but I don't see any problems with junior lawyers, despite what Steve Yegi said. Steve Yegi, if you didn't read the blog, pretty much just said that all junior everythings are about to leave. And so he was wrong, at least from the person I was talking to, saying, hey, no, actually, it's complete crap for that. I would never do that. Nonetheless, but it seems like this is really only geared towards programming. And I'm just trying to apply this to other fields. Like, what other fields could we do this with? I'm not really, I don't know of many. I don't want a robot dentist. But agriculture wouldn't use an LLM. We've already had autonomous agriculture for like 10 years now. It's easier than self-driving.
I want to now switch gears a little bit and talk about one other dimension that I think is very unique. Not only is there a new type of programming language that allows for autonomy in software, but also, as I mentioned, it's programmed in English, which is this natural interface. And suddenly, everyone is a programmer because everyone speaks natural language like English. So this is extremely bullish and very interesting to me, and also completely unprecedented.
Everyone's not a programmer, right? I mean, you could make this like argument like 100 times over. Grace Hopper did this with like COBOL. Business people can be programmers now, right? Like there's a big difference between person sitting down and for an afternoon building something and wow, I got a sloth on a page versus actually being a programmer. These are very different experiences. We all understand this.
It used to be the case that you need to spend 5 to 10 years studying something to be able to do something in software. This is not the case anymore. So I don't know if by any chance...
I don't think that's ever been the case. Most people were able to build stuff and do stuff after a short period of time. It's just building the experience and expertise to understand what is good and bad takes a decade. There's a little bit of a difference there. Right, I think most people can be somewhat useful in programming after like 3 months. You could actually, like I could have somebody with only 6 months of experience fix some bugs for me, right? That doesn't mean they're great. They don't have a lot of experience. They don't really understand a lot of stuff, but you can't shortcut experience. So it's a little bit ridiculous.
Anyone has heard of vibe coding?
5 to 10 years.
This is the tweet that kind of like introduced this, but I'm told that this is now like a major meme. Fun story about this is that I've been on Twitter for like 15 years or something like that at this point, and I still have no clue which tweet will become viral and which tweet like fizzles and no one cares. And
I feel like I have a pretty good one. Like I think that tweet that I just got done tweeting will probably not exceed 600 likes. That's my guess. It's not that great of one, and I don't think it's going to hit home. And so it's like one of those things where there's some tweets that like I just feel like right? Challenge and bait accepted, right?
I thought that this tweet was going to be the latter. I don't know, it was just like a shower of thoughts, but this became like a total meme, and I really just can't tell. But I guess like it struck a chord and it gave a name to something that everyone was feeling.
Trash said lots of things, stupid Bisco.
Words. So now there's a Wikipedia page and everything. This is like. Yeah, this is like a major contribution now or something like that. So, so Tom Wolfe from Hugging.
I have no idea why everyone was clapping. I don't know, but hey, let's all clap together. It was exciting, okay?
They shared this beautiful video that I really love. These are kids vibe coding. And I find that this is such a wholesome video. Like, I love this video.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, there's going to be a couple of those kids that end up being programmers. That's sweet.
The future is great. I think this will end up being
vibe coding is a great gateway drug into learning that programming is really difficult. and then you have to go and learn it. See, I don't hate it. I don't hate that. I love seeing it. Hey, let's go. Great. Obviously, the only person that's going to become a programmer in this whole group is this kid, already chicken necking so hard. Bro already has that nice golden ratio spinal cord being developed. He's ready to become an expert level programmer, okay? You can just tell right away. This man was built like a programmer. But seriously, though, like, I actually like seeing these things. The reason why I like seeing these things is that you want someone, like, all you need to become a great programmer is that spark of curiosity and, like, some sort of satiation of that curiosity that makes you excited to do it again. Now, here's the deal, is that back in, like, the 1990s, you didn't have even Doom at that point. So you didn't have, like, all this crap. You didn't have YouTube. You didn't have shorts. You didn't have all this brain rot. So if vibe coding can make you see a bunch of stuff happen quickly and it gets your brain to say, hey, this is actually cool, let's go. I'm in for the spark. I'm in for the spark. Let's go. I just want that spark for all the, I want that spark, right? That's it. I don't care how you get started, right? I want to see, I just want to see something happen. You know what I mean? More action, more energy. Exactly.
Like a gateway drug to software development.
Yeah, gateway drug. Let's go.
I'm
gateway
not
drug.
a doomer about the future of the generation, and I think
I'm a bit more of a doomer than he is.
So I tried vibe coding a little bit as well because it's so fun. So vibe coding is so great when you want to build something super duper custom that doesn't appear to exist, and you just want to wing it because it's a Saturday or something like that. So I built this iOS app. And I can't actually program in Swift, but I was really shocked that I was able to build like a super basic app, and I'm not gonna explain it, it's really dumb. But I kind of this was just like a day of work, and this was running on my phone like later that day, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I didn't have to like read through Swift for like 5 days or something like that to like get started.
Man, that's great.
I also vibe coded this app called MenuGen, and this is live, you can try it in menugen.app. And I basically had this problem where I show up at a restaurant, I read through the menu, and I have no idea what any of the things are, and I need pictures. So this doesn't exist. So I was like, hey, I'm going to vibe code it. So this is what it looks like. You go to menugen.app, and
the name.
You take a picture of
is
menu,
the MenuGen.
And then MenuGen generates the images. And everyone gets $5 in credits for free when you sign up. And therefore,
look at that shrimp. Dude, come on. Tell me that it's not. Tell me it's not like a little scary sometimes.
Of a menu, and then MenuGen generates the images, and everyone gets $5 in credits for free when you sign up.
Look at that shrimp. Look at it. What's going on? Yeah, I mean,
and therefore,
interesting.
This is a major cost center in my life. So this is a negative revenue app for me right now. I've lost a huge amount of money on MenuGen. Okay, but the fascinating thing about MenuGen for me is that the code of the vibe coding part, the code was actually the easy part of vibe coding MenuGen.
Ooh, I think this is gonna be a good section. Look at this. Look at all the things he's saying here. Okay, this is where we got to put on our we really got to think about what's about to be said here, because this is gonna be, I think, one of the big dangers of LLMs. I can already feel it.
And most of it actually was when I tried to make it real so that you can actually have authentication and payments and the domain name and a versatile deployment. This was really hard, and all of this was not code. All of this DevOps stuff was in me in the browser clicking
taking button. Well, I mean, technically, there's also a lot of code with it too.
Stuff. And this was extreme slog and took another week. So it was really fascinating that I had the MenuGen basically demo working on my laptop in a few hours, and then it took me a week because I was trying to make it real. And the reason for this is this was just really annoying. So for example, if you try to add Google login to your web page, I know this is very small, but just a huge amount of instructions of this clerk library telling me how to integrate this. And this is crazy, like it's telling me, go to this URL, click on this dropdown, choose this, go to this, and click on that. And it's like telling me what to do. Like a computer is telling me the actions I should be taking, like you do it. Why am I doing this? What the hell? I had to follow all these instructions. This was crazy. So I think the last part of my talk, therefore, focuses on, can we just...
Also, think about how many things are going to be built and forced in LLMs to use certain libraries, right? Like when he said he wanted authentication, he used Clerk. right? That's a paid for service. So how much of that is going to start? There's a whole like momentum there that is kind of really interesting where it's like, hey, I need this. Here, use this paid for service. Where does hashtag ad start and where does it end? I don't know.
Build for agents.
Locked in, baby.
I don't want
We're
to do
getting
this
locked
work.
in.
Can agents do this? Thank you. Okay. So roughly speaking, I think there's a new category of consumer and manipulator of digital information. It used to be just humans through GUIs or computers through APIs. And now we have a completely new thing. And agents they're computers, but they are human-like, kind of, right? They're people spirits. There's people spirits on the internet, and they need to
I do not like the term people spirits. I'll accept people reflections. I'm more of in the term reflection than anything else, but spirit is way too much.
interact with our software infrastructure.
I just
But
refuse to use
Can we
it.
build for them? It's a new thing. So as an example, you can have robots.txt on your domain, and you can instruct or like advise, I suppose, web crawlers on how to behave on your website. In the same way, you can have maybe LLMs.txt file, which is just a simple markdown that's telling LLMs what this domain is about. And this is
I'm confused why you'd even need this. Honestly, I thought that, because the reality is that there's more HTML pages out there than there are Markdown pages. So you would assume that LLMs would be pretty good at extracting information.
very readable to an LLM. If it had to instead get the HTML of your web page and try to parse it, this is very error-prone and difficult, and we'll screw it up, and it's not going to work. So we can just directly speak to the LLM. It's worth it. A huge amount of documentation is currently written for people. So you will see things like lists and bold and pictures, and this is not directly accessible by an LLM. So I see some of the services now are transitioning a lot of their docs to be specifically for LLMs. So
Okay.
Vercel and Stripe, as an example, are early movers here, but there are a few more.
Classic Lee W. Lee's a smart guy. I guess in that sense, yeah, that makes sense. Like, hey, we're going to remove all barriers / like movement required, any sort of interaction required, and we're going to inline our entire documentation into something that's like Markdown, so that makes it really easy to navigate and understand. That makes sense.
seen.
People, spirits, or demons? Yeah, you might be right.
Already.
I don't like
And
that term.
They offer
I don't
their
want your
documentation
demons in my
Markdown.
brain.
Markdown is super easy for LLMs to understand.
That's just a sitemap. It
is
really is
great.
just a sitemap.
Maybe one simple example from my experience as well. Maybe some of you know 3 Blue 1 Brown. He makes beautiful animation videos on YouTube.
Woo!
Yeah, I love this library so that he wrote Manin. And I wanted to make my own. And there's extensive documentations on how to use Manin. And so I didn't want to actually read through it. So I copy-pasted the whole thing to an LLM, and I described what I wanted, and it just worked out of the box. Like, LLM just vibe-coded me an animation exactly what I wanted, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. So if we can make docs legible to LLMs, it's going to unlock a huge amount of kind of use. And I think this is wonderful and should happen more.
You know how we were talking about this on the stand-up, how like everything has kind of got inshitified. Like when I press post, there's like a multiple second delay. When I click out of this, there's a multiple second delay. And it's just like everything is being built onto something else, and it's just like slow, and it's just as terrible. I do feel like this kind of approach, one thing that's kind of missing in this talk is that everything he's suggesting is that you just never need to learn anything. Which I guess the real question is, when do you learn to have expertise? Like real talk, when should you learn to have expertise? I agree with him. Like if I just wanted to make a simple one single animation that involved math and there's Manim, do I really want to learn Manim just to do one single animation? I think you're right. Probably not. Like this is a good, like to me, this is where I'm like, okay, this is why I like LLMs, is this exact thing. And so I go back and forth on this is like, I always try to answer this question. When does it matter? But I find myself that bleeding goes backwards. Like my ability to work with Tailwind has gone down over the last 2 years. Instead of being able to just jump on and tailwind myself up any side I wanted, my ability to do that has greatly shrunk because I'm just not using it anymore ever, because I'm just like, dude, I don't want to touch any of this. Make it happen. But maybe I should have just got super good at doing that so that way I can build everything I want really quick the way I want it as fast as possible instead of all this. I don't know. This is just me spitballing. Maybe I should have not lost that little bit of talent. I'm tail wounded. Or maybe I could, I don't care about the whole CSS tailwind argument. Honestly, I built Tailwind before Tailwind was Tailwind in CSS back when I used to do nothing but CSS and JavaScript. And all I would do is just go out there and have to hand roll these like little semantic libraries that I'd be like, left, clear fix, M2, P2, clear fix. A lot of clear fix, right? We've all built our own version of Tailwind if you've done any level of of CSS in your life. It's just now I just have one tool that kind of works all the time. So I'm happy. Float right with 100. Yeah, dude, I've done that so many times in my life. Holy cow. Clearfix was the
thing I
goat.
want to point out is that you do unfortunately have to, it's not just about taking your docs and making them appear in Markdown. That's the easy part.
Yeah, flow layouts. Oh, I did a lot of floating.
Because anytime your docs say click, this is bad. An LLM will not be able to natively take this action right now. So Vercel, for example, is replacing every occurrence of click with the equivalent curl command that your LLM agent could take on your behalf. And so I think this is very interesting. And then, of course, there's a model context protocol from Anthropic, and this is also another way. It's a protocol of speaking directly to agents as this new consumer and manipulator of digital information. So I'm very bullish on these ideas. The other thing
just brushed right over MCPs. Yeah, at the end.
I really like is a number of little tools here and there that are helping
Flexbox is the best part.
Data in like very LLM-friendly formats. So for example, when I go to a GitHub repo, like my NanoGPT repo, I can't feed this to an LLM and ask questions about it. Because it's, this is a human interface on GitHub. So when you just change the URL from GitHub to git ingest, then this will actually concatenate all the files into a single.
I see someone saying they forced Tailwind on my job. Honestly, I think there's a lot of great things about Tailwind. I would just use it and try to enjoy it for the way you want to enjoy it and see how it goes. And if you have good reasons to say why it's bad, at least use it for a little bit. I wouldn't go too negative, honestly, as someone who's hand-rolled all my CSS for years and then doing this, it's just like, yeah. There's a lot of reasons to like this. There's a lot of reasons to like Tailwind.
Little giant text, and it will create a directory structure.
Oh, what's bullish? Bullish, okay, so it comes from the stock market, bulls and bears. If you're bearish on the market, it means that you think that the market is not going to be going up. So are you bearish or are you bullish on Netflix today? So let's take a look. I think Netflix has gone up. I'm bullish on Netflix long term. So I think it's, I generally think it's going to be going up. Boom. Dude, look at that. We're doing so good, bros. We're retiring. Screw streaming. I'm going into investing, right? And so bulls go up, bears go down.
It into your favorite
so if you're bullish, you think that it's going to be good in the future.
Maybe even more dramatic example of this is DeepWiki, where it's not just the raw content of these files. This is from Devin. But also, like, they have Devin basically do analysis of the GitHub repo, and Devin basically builds up a whole docs pages just for your repo. And you can imagine that this is even more helpful to copy-paste into your LLM. So I love all the little tools that basically just change the UI.
I'm curious if that even helps at all, right? Like I have no idea if this kind of stuff helps or not with an LLM. Right? That's something. That's what I got to figure out on this one. Is like, does that help at all? Because I've given a lot of context to these models, and I have done some investigation into some cursor rules, and like at the end of the day, like when you get too much context, when you get too much, there's like a lot of weird linear things that it does. It's just weird. I just get these weird experiences. So I don't know. Devin was a disappointment. I mean, are you that big of a surprise? It's not Devin that was the disappointment. Honestly, Devin was one of the coolest piece of technologies ever. The thing that was driving it was the LLM still. The LLM is the disappointment. It's not Devin. Devin did an incredible job. It's the thing below it that's doing all the running and decision making. I know this might be a hard pill to swallow. It's not that great.
URL, and it makes something accessible to an LLM.
Devin is just a rapper.
Great, and I think there should be a lot more of it. One more note I wanted to make is that it is absolutely possible that in the future, LLMs will be able to, this is not even future, this is today, they'll be able to go around and they'll be able to click stuff and so on. But I still think it's very worth basically meeting LLMs halfway, and making it easier for them to access this information. Because this is still fairly expensive, I would say, to use and a lot more difficult. And so I do think that lots of software, there will be a long tail where it won't adapt because these are not like live player sort of repositories or digital infrastructure, and we will need these tools.
Hold on one second. I got to go pee. I just can't hold it. A2 to A4, great chess move, by the way.
But I think for everyone else, I think it's very worth kind of like meeting in some middle point. So I'm bullish on both, if that makes sense. So in summary,
I really don't understand that last part with this whole operator business. I don't really know what's happening here. I don't think I get it. I don't think I understand. Is it supposed to be? Oh, it just clicks. Is that the whole thing? Is that it goes off and clicks for you? Okay.
So in summary, what an amazing time to get into the industry. We need to rewrite a ton of code. A ton of code will be written by professionals and vibe coders. These LLMs are kind of like utilities, kind of like fabs, but they're kind of especially like operating systems. But it's so early. It's like 1960s of operating systems.
I really think you should just think of it like none of those three, honestly. I'm just going to come out and say it. I just don't think you should think of any of it that way, right? I don't think you should think of it as an operating system or a fab or any of that. I think you should just simply think of them as black box statistical generators, and what goes in, you'll have the statistically most likely output of it. That's it. A very interesting take to think of it as an OS. I really just am not loving the OS thing, honestly. I think it's just that you could draw this in any way, right? You could say, okay, well, the LLM's actually more like a TV, okay? And you could have all these I/O and O things and the Ethernet. Like, you could just replace this with TV, and it pretty much just works the exact same way. You have things coming in, things coming out, and it displays the thing that's supposed to be coming in, right? I don't know. You could just replace it with anything, because it's just an analogy that just takes such a huge idea and reduces it down to like 4 points. And it's just like, I just don't think it's like this. Right. Because I will say this, that there's a lot to OSs in operating systems, and they don't have like, they don't work under the same guise. Like, I wouldn't even like track of it in the same way. Operating systems were really a victim of the time they were in, right? Like the whole round robin sharing one computer is because we just didn't know how to build physical computers that could go fast. We didn't have the technology to then build the next thing that was better. At one point, apparently there was like a very specific group of people from an island who could thread needles through tiny hoops better than anybody else. And for a long time, how we built RAM was specifically hiring those people to thread a wire through these loops to build RAM. Like, this was just a normal part of life for a while in building computers. Like, that's crazy now for us to think about. That sounds made up. It was in my college class. That's all. I'm just reciting what my teacher says. Maybe my teacher made it up for me. But yeah, this is what this is like a reality of life, is that there is a certain level. We can look it up. Well, in fact, we should try to look that up. It's wild to think about that. But there was a time where we had to hand roll RAM, right? RAM was literally hand rolled. It takes 6 transistors to make RAM, right? You had to actually build the things, right? And so operating systems were a victim of what they could run on. Like, that's it. That's all there is to it, right? It's true. They used expert weavers. Yeah, I know. I know there was a thing about it, but I believe there was also like a certain group of people from somewhere that were also just like somehow statistically better weavers than everybody else. But this was a thing. They actually used experts at rolling RAM. It was insane. Anyways, that's besides the point. Is that the whole operating system thing is that they are completely bound to these things. I don't think we have the same bounding, in the sense that our GPUs aren't, we are like hitting literal physical, we're hitting like the world of light limits on what we're building. We're not like, dang, we're still in the mechanical era and we haven't hit the digital era. Unless if this is like the longest way to say quantum computers. Unless if we're about to get to quantum AI. But we're like kind of hitting the limit of things right now. And so we're really like, we're at the end. And so it's hard to say LLMs are like operating systems in the 60s, and they're about to get so better and so different in the next couple years, because the difference between 1968 and 1972 was insane. But I don't feel like, I personally don't feel like anything but like video quality has obviously gone way up. Sound quality has gone way up. I'm not really sold that like programming code. I don't feel like code has gotten that much better over the course of the last year. year and a half. Like I feel the same way I felt about LLM code every single time I see it. I'm like, oh yeah, I can see that. It sucks. Oh, what's that? Yeah, I see that. It sucks. Oh, what's this one? Yeah, I see that. It sucks. I don't feel like it's gotten I mean, I've heard a lot of people say it's gotten worse, but I don't know if I believe them either. I think there's some things that might have gotten a little bit better, but it definitely is not the same. Anyways, so it's hard for me to like make these analogies because then if you think of it like this, you might like put on this guise or you might put this understanding on that somehow we're in 1960s operating systems and we're going to go to 1970s operating systems here shortly, which is an insane difference, right? I don't know if we're going to be hitting insane LLM differences. I have no idea what it's going to be like. All I know is we are like absolutely destroying the utmost, pushing the limits of physical bounds right now in our computing hardware. So, well, that is bullish. It is bullish. It's very bullish. I guess you're right. The man said he was bullish. This is very bullish. All right.
And I think a lot of the analogies cross over. And these LLMs are kind of like these fallible, people spirits that we have to learn to work with.
Refuse to say
the
word
word to do
people
that
spirit.
properly, we need to adjust our infrastructure towards it. So when you're building these LLM apps, I described some of the ways of working effectively
Linear algebra
with
that's
these
been
LLMs,
reduced
and some
to
of the
least
tools
error.
that make that possible, and how you can spin this loop very, very quickly, and basically create partial autonomy products. And then, a lot of code has to also.
Let's see, hold on. Maybe it hasn't improved much in other fields. You just don't have but you just perceive that way because you don't have experience. Well, I can say that it's much better at video, right? Like we can all say it's much better at video. You remember the Will Smith eating spaghetti thing, and then you see it today. My only argument is that most of the errors that existed in the Will Smith spaghetti eating video still exists in videos today. They're just much more hidden, but all the dimensions and the perceptions and things are all slightly off. That just makes it super confusing. Like when you look at it, you're like, this is insane, right? Core rope memory woven by female workers in factories. Yeah, I know this. I know this was a thing, but I believe there was a group of people that were very, very, very specifically good at core rope memory. Anyways, I'd have to go look it up. Now I'm motivated to go look it up. So when I'm done with this, I'm going to have to go look it up. So there is we can all objectively say that video has gotten better. Music has gotten better, obviously. I mean, I played that banger of a tune for us.
Be written for the agents more directly. But in any case, going back to the Iron Man suit analogy, I think what we'll see over the next decade, roughly, is we're going to take the slider from left to right, and it's going to be very interesting to see what that looks like.
I think we will too.
And I can't wait to build it with all of you.
I'm just more pessimistic on that other side. Part of me thinks that slider is going to result in incredibly frustrating services, right? Like I just feel like it just has. By the way, it's also kind of nuts that you did like a little generation of Iron Man, right? Is this AI generated? I don't remember Tony Stark. I don't remember. This does not look like RDJ. Okay, I don't know who that is, but I feel like Disney might need to sue some asses coming up here. Okay. Chad Stark. It's definitely Chad Stark, but right, isn't Disney already suing? Disney's suing somebody, right? Right now over AI generation. This would be this is definitely AI because there's just too many things popping out of it. It's like doesn't make any sense. Like what the heck's going on here? And so look at this. Yeah, Disney's suing Midjourney, right? Oh, they're suing Midjourney. Yeah, I knew they were suing. I just couldn't remember which image generation they were suing, but they're suing Midjourney. Look at this image. Where do you think they got? How would this image know what Iron Man looks like? Ronaldo is suing. Ronaldo. Like how would the AI know? This is Antonio. This is Antonio. This is Antonio. Antonio Ben Arnan. Georgia. Fair use. Is it fair use? Is that what that's called? Maybe it's not. Maybe that's just a toy. Is this whole time that's just a toy? Oh, maybe this is a toy. Oh, look at that. Oh, it is a toy. Dang. Okay, so it wasn't AI. I thought this was AI because these little flaps right here are so weird. My mind couldn't comprehend what they're doing. I told you that like 5 minutes ago. Dude, I'm in the world. Remember, we already talked about this. Okay? What is it? Everything you see, you're going to attribute now to AI. Because everything I can't help it now. Now everything feels like AI. Because I can't believe my lying eyes anymore. Anyways, all right, great video though. There's a lot of good things he had to say in this video. It's pretty surprising. I guess to me, because he's obviously an AI glazer. I'm a bit more of an AI gloomer. I wouldn't call myself a doomer. I'm more of just a gloomer, right? Just generally speaking, I don't think it's that fantastic. I've tried over and over again to vibe code. I think there's things that are really great about it, right? Like if I never ever want to deal with some like Manum, the math library to make an animation, like I could just use AI, and that there is something pretty exciting about that. And so like I get this, and I get his ideas, and him being a glazer. It's interesting. I didn't really like his analogies of what AIs were because I feel like they're just too simplistic. I kind of feel like maybe he could have used it as like a brief passing, but there's so much like analogizing to these things that I kind of got lost in the sauce, right? I was getting a bit lost in the sauce on what he was trying to say or what I was supposed to take away. Like AI as a utility, it feels hard other than you're claiming that tokens are like the physical medium like energy is for electricity, I don't know. I was just having a hard time, but there's a lot of good stuff in there. I really was happy about it. Great talk. Good job, Andrej, for that one. I know some people might think I'm a bit negative on things. I'm not trying to be negative. Oh, by the way, friends, let the video play all the way to the end.
Thank you.
I noticed I forgot to let it play all the way to the end. Okay. Okay, you heard. Did you hear me, you two? Don't forget to play till the end. You friends do that, okay? Anyways, hey, thank you very much. The name is the Menuagen.